welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I'm your host, Demosthenes, and with me, as always, is our awesome co-host, Mr. Kyle Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
Look, I'll tell you what, man. The only thing that you'll be certain of when this episode is done, actually, no, you'll be certain about nothing. We'll just look really good.
There'll be an ambiguous nature to our episode, which kind of goes in line with Blade Runner, and especially Blade Runner 2049, the new sequel that came out last weekend. We have a lot to talk about this film, but I'm just gonna lay it out there. We're gonna get into spoilers halfway through, but even before,
Already?
wow. halfway through. But if you're interested in seeing this movie, don't watch this. Actually, I'm telling you right now, don't watch this episode. Go see it. Don't watch any trailers. Don't read any synopsis. See it.
The same mistake Demos did by watching the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer. Go see the damn movie.
Well, I will say that the trailers for Blade Runner 2049, despite my warnings, did a very good job of hiding most of the reveals. It was very well done, but I still implore, see it as fresh as possible. If you haven't seen the original Blade Runner, watch our required viewing, and then watch it. despite our consensus on it, go watch it anyway. But if you're not heeding my advice, at least watch this first half. So today we'll be talking about whether or not you should go see Blade Runner 2049. Spoiler alert: yes, you should. But it's a shame. I really wanted to do this episode because it didn't do very well at the box office. It opened number one, fell way below expectations, and we wanted to address that, especially in a time where Transformers movies and all their sequels are making billions of dollars, when the Emoji Movie is a big hit, when all this sugary content is constantly being driven at you that has no real meat to it. And here we have a real thinking man's, a true, genuine science fiction film that's not pow 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 every 2 seconds. And I appreciate that. I think it's a film worth seeing. I don't know, Kyle. I don't know what Kyle's opinion on this is. He may very well disagree with me completely. But
I think it was a good film. I thought it was a very enjoyable film. I think it's one you should go see, Demos. I'm right with you on that. I think where they got themselves in the trouble, and these are dice they rolled, man. And this is not. I don't think this is the same studio that rolled the dice on Scott Pilgrim Saves the World, but this is the kind of thing where they took a risk, taking a 30-plus-year-old movie.
35, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I'll go say 35. Screw it. A 35-year-old movie and saying this is a direct sequel. The problem is your typical movie-going audience is not 35 years old. And you were betting on a niche audience to carry it. And that's always going to be a risk. So 30 instead of 50 million. I know that doesn't mean a lot to you or me, but in the world of studios that are laying out that kind of money, 20 million bones is plentiful. And that's going to be problematic. Somebody in a powerful position in the studio is going to be left with a bad impression, and somebody else is going to be left with damaged credibility that might have a good idea that should see the screen that won't because of it. I mean, I know I'm way overreaching on the impact that might have, but that's just to speak to those out there that may not have thought that far ahead as nerdily as I have.
Well, there is a danger to that, and I hope this isn't the case. But when a movie of this ilk underperforms in comparison to everything else, like a Transformers that does perform, what can that suggest the direction that the studio would rather go with the property that does perform, or the risk that nobody really wanted to see it? We shouldn't make any more of these thinking man movies. This is a film that I do recommend seeing in theaters. I do recommend seeing on the biggest screen possible, and just really just take it all in.
Even though I didn't, I would recommend the same too, for the record.
I'm lucky. I live next to a true IMAX theater, not a FOMAX. This is like a true 60 by 90. It's a tremendous experience. But if we're good, if we're talking about the the impact it has had in the sound and especially a visual level, and the visuals in this film are, I know this sounds cliche, but almost worth the price of admission. This film knocked my socks off. I really enjoyed it. It took what was already what I despite how you feel about the rest of the movie, the original Blade Runner was a visual masterpiece. It was far this far-reaching influence is incredible. But this film took that style and took that setting and expanded it in an organic, arresting, engrossing way. And if
Right.
Roger Deakins, who's been nominated for 14 times, I think, it may be more, but let's just say about 14 times, has never won. If he doesn't win for Blade Runner 2049, you're never gonna see an Academy Awards review from me on Default Assault because it'll be a travesty. It was a travesty when he lost for Skyfall.
I think you're definitely on the money with a lot of the visuals. And I mean, when you throw up the spoiler bitches flag, I'll get into precisely the scene that he can slam on the desk of every Academy member's office and walk out. And that should give him the damn award on the strength of that alone. But we'll get into that later.
I actually do one of the biggest arguments I have heard, and this does tend when it comes to any talk of performances, I know that some of it's going to go towards spoilers, but I do want to outline. I've heard a lot of people say that Ryan Gosling, people who saw the film, that Ryan Gosling came off as way too stoic or so forth. I thought, yeah, I disagree. I thought the performances
Flip
in
a
this
table
film,
saw and threw my pad in the air.
yeah,
Go.
I thought the performances in this film were fantastic. Harrison Ford is he doesn't, and this isn't much of a spoiler if you haven't watched the trailers, but he doesn't show up until a later point in the
Right.
film, and but his presence is felt throughout, and he is the heart of this picture.
I love the way you put that.
But yeah, just to summarize before we get into spoilers, because I'm kind of itching to get there. Um, it's a very good film. It's visually outstanding. The story is fantastic. It's if anything, if there's the one issue that both of us really elaborated on with TJ in the Blade Runner required viewing was the story, and this film focuses on a good story. There are
Yeah.
turns that this story takes. I will say that for the first maybe 30, 40 minutes of the film, I felt like I felt like I knew where it was going. They set things up in such a way that it felt they didn't quite spell it out, but you get the sense like, oh, I know what they're doing, I know where they're going, and then they throw a turn. I would even describe it as a twist. It sounded like haha, we got you twist. The story takes
That didn't happen here.
it takes a turn around the bend, and it just changes your entire viewing of the story. And this is a film that would benefit very much from a second viewing and a third viewing.
I'll agree with that. And before we jump into spoilers, here's something I could say definitively. The only negative I would draw from this film, and even people who I normally hold their opinions very high and critique praised the soundtrack. No, stop it. Okay? All this was some more blah, except, and Demos, check out the riveting innovation that took place here. They went blah, blah. Okay? That's your goddamn soundtrack for a lot of this movie. It was very disappointing, especially from what we got from the first Blade Runner 35 years ago. I was not a fan.
The best themes in the movie were the original themes by Vangelis. And whenever they harken back to those themes, it was great. And I can see the way they tried to expand on that. But I'll be honest, I wouldn't even just say that it was a bwong. If if you've seen Arrival, which was also done by Denis Villeneuve, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but fantastic director. He directed Arrival. He also directed Blade Runner 2049 and Sicario. A lot of the soundtrack to me sounded like the aliens from Arrival. That kind of It's a blong mixed with kind of like a cripply crackle.
Wow.
Yeah, and there are at least a couple of scenes where it's done in succession. It's like, it's like, I'm like,
Okay, Demos, real quick. I hate to take this off topic, but do you suddenly feel like you're at an auto mechanic shop trying to like imitate a sound that your car is making?
I'm sorry, buddy, but if my car sounded like either Inception or the Arrival aliens, I have bigger problems than a shitty car.
But that's my point, dude. Soundtracks are supposed to be so much more than something I could walk into a friggin' auto mechanic shop and imitate. It's supposed to grab me, and all this did was like, oh look, Uncle Phil found out that Carlton can't swim. Sorry.
Check, check out our episode where have the good film themes gone. Here's I'll lay it right out.
That's what we're doing.
The beauty of the original Blade Runner was the way that Vangelis scored it. He was sitting in a room, he was watching the film, and he did most of it all by himself. He was reacting emotionally to what he was seeing on screen and playing interpreting his emotion into song while he was watching it. It was the soundtrack was a character and an emotion in and of itself. In Blade Runner 2049, the soundtrack calls attention to itself.
Yes. Great call by you. I like that.
That's the problem. You don't feel like you're connecting to the emotion. It feels like, "Bwah, this is how you're supposed to feel." Bwah, like okay.
TJ in the required reading episode for the original Blade Runner is too many times, or what was it he said? He said he hates scores that where he can acknowledge that they're there, where instead they're in the background. It should be like a good referee in a sporting event. You shouldn't even know they're there.
The scores, I mean, there are some iconic scores that do call attention to themselves, but they're used in a way to raise up your emotions. When you see Indiana Jones getting control of the truck during Raiders of the Lost Ark during the truck chase, when he finally throws the guy out the window, he gets control of the truck, and the Indiana Jones theme revs up. You're not paying attention so much to the existence of the theme. You're feeling it along with it. It's accenting your emotion.
Exactly. It's still a background piece. It's an icing on the cake, and the cake is Indiana Jones getting the upper hand in the situation. No question.
But yeah, unless there's anything you want to add before we go into the spoiler section.
Nah, drop the spoiler, bitches.
Go see it.
All right, class. Spoilers, bitches. Spoilers.
Okay. We're in spoilers. We can finally talk about Blade Runner 2049 in detail. This is a cathartic moment for me because I haven't written a review this year where I felt like I only barely scratched the surface of my thoughts for this film. So I can finally get that out.
That's real big.
But I'm gonna be gracious and let you talk first. Tell me about your thoughts of this film.
Man, I'll tell you what, whoever the moron is that thinks Gosling's performance is too stoic, yo, dipshit. He's a robot, for the love of Christ. Hicketus ficketus, motherfucker. I just evolved you to realize how wrong you are. If you're that guy, go pay the money to see the movie again. No, you have not earned the right to wait for the DVD to be this stupid to have a problem with Ryan Gosling's performance. You take your sorry ass, you pay the $15 again, and watch that bitch in the theater and realize just exactly how wrong you are. Period. Now,
but real quick, Chris, I know you're probably watching this.
Who?
Chris, well, the exact gentleman who I had this argument with is a fan of the show. Let us know a little bit more about your opinion in the comments below. Keep watching, like, and subscribe.
But take your ass back to the theater and make sure you spend the $15.
Go
on. But yeah, dude, the one thing I want to get out, and I'm gonna do it right now just to make sure it's done, man. Okay, so the scene I cited earlier that can just be slammed onto the desks of the members of the Academy, and walk out, and you should get the award just based on that. The synced love scene between Gosling and his artificial partner. I don't even know the right way to even express what she is.
Hologram, I guess.
A hologram, yeah, but I mean, like, do we even really get a name out of her? We don't even really get that. Punchline being, she syncs up with a flesh and blood, lacking a better term, I'll say escort. And the act of that syncing, it's obviously supposed to be at least somewhat sexual, but it's tastefully done. And
there's definitely an erotic element to it.
Certainly, and there's supposed to be, but it's still tasteful. It's executed in such a fashion where, look, this is something that could happen in the future, and it would look something like this. And they're still working out the kinks, because at the end of the day, the ability to simulate the real thing is, and I believe this is a creative choice that is being accentuated here. The real thing is always going to be better, but here's this: if you happen to be somebody who feels like they can't achieve that with all the pressures of future society.
It's an interesting scene. You have a character who thinks he's half human. You have a replicant, and you have a hologram, all having a very interesting three-way. And it's a testament to the characters in this film and how well they're set up. Because if you weren't emotionally connecting to at least the main two characters, the hologram and Ryan Gosling's character, that scene would have been hokey as shit.
Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily call it titillating per se. It was truly an artistic expression of going, yeah, in that situation, it would look something like this. Okay. And the pure execution of it was just fantastic.
It was captivating. I've rarely outside. I mean, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I've rarely been as captivated by a sex scene that didn't involve nudity.
Bro, that's legit. Like, it doesn't, and that's what I mean by tasteful. It doesn't take it to the point you know what's going on, but you don't see what's going on. I mean, it's a little more risque than something you'd see in Casablanca, but by today's standards, there's not a whole lot that they really show. And what's funny is a lot of the advertisements show more than that scene does. That's the interesting parallel there, right?
I'm just imagining Sam in the corner, and Humphrey Bogart saying, "Play it again, Sam," and they start over.
Like Casablanca 2049. You fucking shitting me
right? No, I agree. That scene was very well done. And to be honest, though, we were talking about the outstanding visuals of this film, right? So you immediately when you think of that, you're gonna think of all the amazing cityscapes, the use of color, which is extraordinary. You're gonna think of all that, but this is a scene that takes place in the most mundane setting. It's in his apartment. There's some futuristic tech there, but really, when you take a step back, it feels like a real world extension of what that an apartment might look like in 10 years alone.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not even really an apartment. It's a fucking cell. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like a studio apartment looks at you and goes, "God damn, you're small." You know what I'm saying?
And yet you're saying that one of the most visually arresting scenes was done in this mundane cell. Talk about that.
Yeah, this mundane closed space. Accent on that, because there's plenty of open world beauty there. Let's not be stupid. You cited the use of color and all of that, but the lacking at a better word, borderline claustrophobic space that is Ryan Gosling, the replicant's apartment, is where this takes place. Absolutely.
But I want to go into performances. Now, we mentioned Ryan Gosling. We mentioned Harrison Ford. I mean, this is a film that has really great performances. I'm forgetting her name now. The villainous replicants. What's her name? Angel? What's her name? Love. There we go. Close enough. Barbarella reference. Angels are love. Anyway. So She was fantastic. But I think the one performance that nobody is talking about, and I understand why they're not talking about because it gives away the biggest turn in the film is, and I know I'm crucifying her name, Carla Juri, um, as the actual daughter of Harrison Ford,
Yes.
the memory maker from her very first scene. And mind you, I thought that this was just like a unique character. I didn't see it coming that she was going to be vital and she was going to return to the story. But she had such a beautiful performance. She you know who she reminded me of? She had a soft-spoken, elegant passion to her that reminded me a little bit of Ingrid Bergman to bring back Casablanca. She had that type of quality.
I'm not gonna knock that parallel because it's not far off on you. I had kind of a I went a different direction, going with another one of our required viewings. Um, I kind of picked up an element of Lilu from her from the Fifth Element. Once she had a little bit more time under her belt to process all the information she had.
I can see that. I can see that.
But
There
the
is
innocent
a
Bergman,
vulnerability between the
yeah,
two
the
of them.
Bergman parallel is plenty fine, dude. I there's definitely an innocence there that you get from the Bergman caricature in general. I totally follow that.
But here's the thing that the quality that Bergman had is that she can display vulnerability and innocence, but still in the manner that she spoke, in the manner that she came across, appear as a very intelligent, a smart, knowledgeable individual
Definitely.
through that performance. And it's something I've always admired about Ingrid Bergman. You watch a film like Spellbound, watch her confrontation with Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. Watch her in Notorious. Um, and young woman, this actress, she really captured that, and I was also awestruck. I was awestruck that, and in a fantastic way, to bring that character back, and have that last final shot between Ford and her with the window separating them. That was beautiful.
That was very nice. That was very nice. If we're talking performances right now, though, look, man, um, sh her biggest role before recently would have been that of Jenny in Forrest Gump, but now people know her as Claire Underwood, and I'll tell you, her role as Gosling's commanding officer. This is a character that shouldn't have really been all that important and was effing brilliant in the movie. And frankly, her final scene with Love was fan effing tastic. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And these are two air quotes minor characters. We're not even touching on Ford and Gosling and the big moving pieces, that are going on in the film. And that was a fantastic interaction that I thoroughly enjoyed.
If you thought that the original Blade Runner was a slow film, if you fall into that camp, I can understand if you think that this film is slower. It is an hour more, I think more than an hour longer. It probably could have been trimmed up a little bit.
Right.
It is a bit overlong. It doesn't bother me. I don't think it really hurts the film very much, but I yeah, it could have been trimmed up a bit, I think.
Let me put it this way, and I think you'll relate to this with the way I express it. Like the first movie, F you. That bitch was slow. I can't help you. Okay. Yeah, I elaborate on it better in the required viewing episode. Check that out. Trust me, it's worth your time. Um, with 2049, I wasn't pissed off about the fact it was 2 hours and 45 minutes long until I did the math to have that pointed out to me. So while I was in the movie, zero given. So I think that speaks to at least decent storytelling through that period of time.
I was actually shocked when I realized that Harrison Ford doesn't show up until maybe the 2 hour mark. He's barely. I mean, and I don't want to say he's barely in the movie. He's in maybe a third of the movie, if
He's in
less.
longer than Jared Leto's in Suicide Squad. I'll put it that way.
Jared Leto is barely in this movie to speak of. His character was the only one that I was a little ambivalent about.
It felt
I
like they were trying too hard with him. Yeah.
I thought that his philosophizing and his monologuing went just a hair too far to the point where but you know what, if there's ever a movie universe where Jared Leto belongs in, this is it.
Good call by you. And I would even add this, perhaps, and granted, this is me trying to look at something as optimistically as possible. Perhaps our impression of this villain, as played by Jared Leto, is that he has his head that far up his own ass to where he has to keep philosophizing slash preaching as if he's some sort of half-ass oracle slash Sophocles character. To that extent, as annoying as it may have been to watch at times, it fits that character. Though I do enjoy the parallel that the character's eyes are singularly blind, even though his vision's based on all these other cameras around him that can see at every angle. So even though he can see at so many different angles, he's still relatively blind. That's a very interesting aspect.
And especially in a series where eyes have been a running theme, how both movies begin with a close up of an eye.
Yep.
So to cast your villain of this kind of piece being a blind man, I think was interesting. I think the biggest masterstroke of this film was because let's just face it, anybody expecting a sequel to Blade Runner is expecting the answer to one question: is Deckard a replicant? How can you make a sequel where you don't answer it? And this film maintains the ambiguous nature of that ending, and it addresses it, but it doesn't give you the definitive answer, because either way, if he is a replicant or if he's human, it doesn't change the story or the special nature of the child.
Correct. So basically, here's the you pose the question: how do you make a sequel without answering that question definitively? Go see 2049, bitches.
Very much so, very much so. I mean, and that's the beauty, because as a person who thinks that the original film is a lot stronger if Deckard is a human, this film doesn't ruin that. Is it the flawless masterpiece that a lot of people are saying it is? I think it's. I don't think it's flawless, and I'd argue that there isn't such a thing as a flawless film to begin with.
Not in the Blade Runner universe by any stretch.
Yeah. Yes, it has some issues. Yes, it's a little overlong. Yes, I'm still ambivalent about Jared Leto. But for everything that it did right, it not only did right, but it did so in an extraordinary way. I can see this being considered a future classic. I can see this film, and I say future classic because anybody that says modern classic,
there's no such thing.
It's a freaking oxymoron.
Sorry.
20. I go by car rules. So you have to be at least 20 years old before you're even considered to be classic status. But I can see this film being considered. I can see this film being inspirational. I don't know if it's going to be the same length as Blade Runner, because this film would not exist if it weren't for the original film. But I can see this being inspirational. It may not be a huge blockbuster, but it has the makings of a film that's going to resonate.
I'll put it to you this way, Demos. When I watched the original Blade Runner for the required viewing episode, I was like, ooh, 2019. Oh, we're only 2 years away. You know, I feel like when my daughter, Veronica, watches 2049 in 2047 and goes, ooh, we're only 2 years away, she'll have a much better experience than I did watching the first Blade Runner. Ergo, it has the potential to be dubbed the classic when we look at this in 2037, when obviously the Hilarity by Default podcast will be one step away from world domination. But yeah, overall, great film, compelling, enthralling, visually arresting.
all those platitudes. If any of you marketers or executives are watching this right now, I give you permission to quote what I just said in the trailer, as long as you tell people to check out hilaritybydefault.com, where I release weekly movie reviews and other fun stuff. Kyle, unless you have anything else to add.
So long as in Blade Runner 2089, hilarity by default is one of the big things on the side of the building.
I'll be right up there with Atari and Pan Am.
That's right, but with a much better fate in their future, I dare say.
There's only one ad that annoyed me in that film. I understood. I think it may have been the original. I don't remember this one, but the Sony ad that just kept blinking. Oh yeah. It's funny that the first time you hear "boing," it's when the Sony logo pops up at the beginning of the damn movie.
Hey, look, man. For the record, like when I saw the Atari logo, I laughed in the theater. My wife was like, "What's so funny?" I'll just tell you later. If you don't know, I ain't going to be able to tell you in this environment.
Well, that's pretty much it for us. Go see it. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Default Hilarity and on Facebook, Hilarity by Default. Kyle, where can we find you?
Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You won't even care if I'm a replicant or not because I'm so damn awesome. You can check me out on Twitter at the SOTG and, of course, on Facebook as the student of the game. Demos, great times all the way around, man. Thanks.
Definitely. And remember, replicants don't have souls, but life is still going to be hilarious by default.